Hello, innovators. I'm Dustin Miller, PolyInnovator. Today we're talking with Nico Tari, the founder of Polymath University. Thank you for joining me on the Polymath Polycast.
Thank you for having me.
This is a show by PolyInnovator, so please say hello to the innovators in the audience. Hello and welcome to the Polymath Polycast.
Hello, innovators. I'm glad that you can join us today. We got some very spicy and sizzling content coming up your way. So
definitely. Well, and I was mentioning before the episode with Nico that we have a lot of similar things going on with the whole Polymath University and modular degree, and then the content creation. He's even doing gaming streaming, which I'm trying to do gaming streaming, so it's kind of funny.
Nice.
So the way I like to break the ice is to have you share something about yourself that no one knows about you.
No one knows about me. Yeah, it's difficult because my girlfriend pretty much knows everything about me.
Well, excluding her then, I guess.
Excluding her, okay. I really do not like cleaning. I think it's so boring.
Yeah.
I think it's so annoying. I'm glad my girlfriend does most of the cleaning. I do more of other stuff like taking out the trash or fixing stuff if it's broken. But I hate cleaning. I can't do it.
I was thinking about that the other day. I can do most cleaning. I cleaned the windows of my apartment just randomly. I was like, okay, let's do it. Actually, not randomly. I got a brand new window, so I was cleaning that and cleaning the mirrors. Didn't faze me at all. Vacuuming the floors didn't faze me at all. But when it comes to laundry or dishes, I can't stand it.
Yeah, I actually wash the pans after dinner usually, and I also sometimes do laundry. But yeah, grabbing one of those squirters or one of those wet towels and clean, I don't like doing that at all.
This is boring. So you got Polymath University and pro gaming going on, but what got you started before all of that? What was your mindset?
Yes. So my mindset has actually changed a lot ever since I grew older, became an adult. So when I was growing up, I didn't have the best high school in the Netherlands. I also kind of grew up on the bad side of town. And my high school was actually, I believe, named as one of the worst high schools in the Netherlands at that point. So yeah, education was really bad. I found it very difficult to be motivated to learn anything there because it was just it was not interesting for me, and it turns out the quality was also really bad. So early on in life after high school, I had the feeling that higher education and stuff wasn't really for me. I didn't know because I didn't have any interest in it. So and also money was kind of tight as I was growing up. My mother's company didn't do so well. It went bankrupt, so we were also out of money. So when I was around 18, the only thing I had on my mind was to get some money. That was the only thing I had before my eyes. I needed some money so I can relax and just lead a chill life, So I was working at this clothing store. I didn't like the work there for numerous reasons. One of the reasons was my boss was annoying, etc., etc. Actually, as a hobby back then, I was playing poker. And I always saw on television, it was really a hip at that time. You had these big tournaments with big prize monies and stuff. And on the website that I was playing on, PokerStars, there were also these partner programs where if you play a lot, they would pay out some money back to you that you pay to play actually. And that could if you play enough, that could go up and tens of thousands you could earn basically if you just played enough. Long story short, that went pretty well. I became not a huge famous professional player that every poker player on the world knows, but I did pretty well. So at some point I had some savings, and that was really good. So at that point I started to think about okay, I have a pretty relaxed life right now. I have income. I have freedom to spend it on what I want. What should I do? And most people would, I don't know, buy a lot of expensive clothing. I don't know what they would spend it on, but not very smart stuff. I actually thought, I want to give university a try. That's what I thought back then. I don't know how I came to that. Like, why on earth a guy like me back then would want to give university a shot? But I did. And I'm really glad I did, because once I started with my first bachelor degree, I absolutely fell in love with science. Like, I felt like, because my high school was really bad, I felt like at that point in time, that was the first time I actually learned something interesting, you know, when I first started out at university. And that's where it all began. And since then, my first interest got sparked for my first study, communication and media. Then I became interested in so many things, philosophy, even math, and that just steamrolled my thirst for knowledge. And now I'm here trying to build up an organization that revolves around knowledge and teaching people as much as possible. So
that's cool.
That's the history. Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting too, because my high school wasn't bad, but I never resonated well with it. I was always a scholar, but never an academic, is how I always explain it. It's terrible in school.
Yeah.
But that self-education was what drove me. But regardless, both of us were driven by that desire for more at the end. And being able to pursue that education, whether it's official or not, is something that you talk about in one of your videos too, is that like people are autodidactic. And I think that everybody's a learner by nature, but we often learn not to learn over the years. We start to learn, okay, you don't need to be interested in all that now that you have a career. Stop learning and go work on it. It's like, well, no, you still need to learn about your field, cultivate your craft, and learn more, expand yourself. So what inspired you then, since actually you already took your university, to create Polymath University?
Right. So basically when I started out at university, but also before, I was always interested in so many things. Like when people used to ask me when I was young, what do you want to be? Do you want to be a fireman? Do you want to be an astronaut? I always felt a little bit cringy about having to do one thing the rest of my life, you know, just that one thing. I understand that for some people that's what they want, but I was never that type of person, you know.
Oh, sorry, I think you're preaching to the choir. Sorry.
Yeah. And I had the same feeling when I started out at university and I was just studying one thing. I felt the need to do more. And also when I started to do philosophy, I started to see like connections between my main study at the time, communication and media, and philosophy. Like I noticed that they had overlap. And I thought, if these subjects have overlap, then all the other subjects must have overlap too. And I find that so interesting to discover all this stuff that people kind of overlook because they're not interested in looking outside of their area of expertise. And that kind of just went into a snowball effect where philosophy made me interested in math. Math made me interested in physics. Physics made me interested in psychology and then neuroscience. And at university, I was meeting all these kinds of people that had their own expertise and I want to know more about, you know, and all of this just comes together, I think, after university, where I want to do Polymath University.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because I don't remember where I got this example from, but specialists are in their trench. They're focused on their trench, digging their trench farther and farther out. But oftentimes they'll hit a roadblock that they can't solve in the area of knowledge that they have. And oftentimes the answer they need could be as simple as the trench over next to them, just a knowledge area adjacent, like not even necessarily like going from social sciences to math to science, that was big of a jump. It could be psychology and sociology, something very similar, but like you only focus on one, well, then you're missing out the connection between them.
Yeah, this also reminds me of that video where you guys were talking about the tree-ness of knowledge. And it's funny that you mentioned this because I too have thought of a similar metaphor when sciences run into issues. Like I also agree with like that sciences are digging like trenches there, and also with specializations. The only thing you're trying to do is go deeper and deeper. But sometimes like branching out to the adjacent areas, like I think that is what polymaths are supposed to do, and philosophers, and just people in general want to do more than just specialization. And I think this is something that we're overlooking, the branching out to the different trenches.
Well, when you said that too, it made me think of if you're in a battlefield and you're fighting against the person ahead of you. Well, if you just make one trench right here and not multiple trenches for you to fall back on, then you're only leaving yourself with one line of defense. And so if they overcome you in that trench, well, you have nothing to go back to and you're screwed.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. You also see it everywhere in nature, like everything branches out, you know. Why does a tree branch out and not just have one thing going in the ground, you know? It's better, it's more effective to get water. You see this everywhere in nature. Also like our social networks, you know, everything is networked. Yeah. It happens for a reason, and knowledge should be like this as well.
For sure. Well, and you're talking about these trees. I wanted to actually kind of mention something here too, plugging in the modular degree I'm working on, because the thing is, it's similar to Polymath University in the fact that we wanted to provide information. I'm not necessarily creating the courses just yet. I'm more thinking about the structure of the courses. And in particular, considering how you were mentioning earlier, you didn't want to just do one thing. You didn't want to focus on just one area. Well, that's the true for all polymaths for the most part. We don't want to just finish on just one area. But even specialists and people who aren't polymathic, we only can focus on one thing for so long. It's just how our brains work. So we like to switch tasks. Most courses, especially online courses now, are linear, where they have module after module after module. So there's this concept that I created for modular education called skill tree-based learning. You and I both are gamers, and most games, there's these skill trees. And when you go down one skill tree, you get these particular skills you can use in the game, combat, and then you have the actions and then the passives and whatever. Each little node on that skill tree gives you something else to do and to learn and to play with. Well, what if we took that concept and applied it to courses? So you have your course here on how to build a house. Well, you have a branching path for carpentry, a branching path for electricity wiring, and a branching path on actually how to build a house. If you're more interested in the more macro, well, then you're going to go down that path to build a house. If you want nitty gritty, then you're going to learn about the carpentry. And if you get bored on that path, then you could switch. And I think that's really key. And that's one of the things I wanted to share with you.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. And also the fact that people can just switch when they are sick of something to go do something else. I think there's not enough space for that in like mainstream education right now. And it's a shame because people who are interested in something can do 1,000 more productive things than when you're not interested. And I mean, you don't really have much control on what you're interested in. I mean, you can't change that at the feet of your will, or I don't know if that's the right expression, but
I would disagree just a little bit, because our lack of knowledge of what that area entails would make it to where, like, if I see a video game and at first the trailer and the pictures I don't like, but I haven't played it yet, well, then I don't know if I like the game or not. I have to go into that a little bit deeper, play the game, try it out, and then I know. And so sometimes it takes a little bit of grit, a little bit of just pushing through some of the boredom parts, like getting through the tutorial, for example, to actually feel it.
No, I totally agree with that. Like I'm also fully aware that there is this kind of human tendency to just not try out new stuff. It's also just the safe way to play it, right? Because you can't fail. You can just do what you're good at. But I'm talking more about when you have a certain amount of experience in whatever, you've been doing it for a certain time, and at some point you just get bored with it, you know? I mean, that just happens. You can't do much about it. And then forcing that person to do that thing for another 5 years, I think it's cruel.
Well, and that's on a bigger scale too, especially for like careers. People always say you work at one job for 30, 40 years. The ironic part, if you're working for that employer for that 40 years, well, you're not working just one job. You're more than likely going to either move sideways and get a different job, or get promoted again. Each of those new jobs are their own career in itself, its own skill sets. So you were literally changing your skill set by doing so. So you're not doing just one thing. I think a lot of people forget about that. And going back on your point too, if you're doing that housing skill tree course that I mentioned, well, I've been doing carpentry for so long. I'm getting bored. I don't want to take this anymore. Well, when you go down to the how to build a house course, you're going to learn why you have to cut the wood in that way, because you're learning how it works in the housing aspect. Once you learn that, then the carpentry becomes way more interesting again too. So it's kind of interesting. context. Like you mentioned earlier at the beginning, where when you do one new area, it changes how the first area is.
Yes. Yeah, that's how it goes. And that's also why I think it should be great if it was possible for people to move sideways or just go up or down or just do something completely new and then come back, All of this stuff has positive effects, like without a doubt.
Well, and kind of moving to the next question here, what you seem to be doing with Polymath University is close to what I hope from like these poly-innovator ecosystem that I've been making for my own stuff for content. And I like how we're both aligned, like we keep saying. But what have you learned as a content creator?
So one thing I noticed is this is something natural that happens as you get more experience. I feel that the quality of my stuff gets better. And once you reach a certain point of quality, then followers just start to come organically. Mm-hmm. Like in the beginning, I used to do a lot of effort to get more followers, just ask people I meet, please follow me, But at some point, you reach a point where it goes naturally and you have to be patient for that. Mm-hmm. But when you reach that point, then you can just focus on putting the best stuff out there that you can, and you will just grow. And that's great. But you need to get the intuition to make your videos what the people want. And if you can get that insight, it takes a lot of hard work. But once you get there, then you just understand it and it grows naturally.
Yeah.
That is one thing. One thing I noticed is as I put more stuff in, like my website or my YouTube, it becomes also easier to be found.
Yeah.
So that's also like branching the network. It helps you for people to find you faster. So, yeah.
So it's interesting you say that too, because some of the bigger creators like Roberto Blake and Gary Vee, they always say, put out content. It doesn't matter about quality so much, put it out. And once you get quantity, quality will come from that, from experience.
Yeah, exactly.
They say 100 videos, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the most important stuff I learned as a content creator. Just improve, make good quality stuff, and people will come, man, and watch it. Yeah, that's how it goes.
Well, and one thing I always disagreed with was the whole niching down concept. As polymaths, we don't want to pick just one thing. But the algorithms only know what to show people if they know what you're about. And if you're polymathic, your channel is going to be about many different things. Like you have philosophy, mythology, science, and polymathy. So same for me. I have a whole bunch of random crap on my channel, and I love it. It's amazing, and it's an awesome holistic system. But because of that, it's harder for us to grow because we don't have that niche to people to find us by hashtags and like all that good stuff. It's interesting how it's more true to ourselves, and the people who resonate with that truth are the ones that are joining us.
Yeah, that's true. I've also had with many of my endeavors that I just want to do what I think is most important and valuable for people. And like recognition of that will follow, I think. If what you're doing is a really good cause, then I think, recognition of that will follow eventually.
This
Sometimes
is a prime
you have
example.
to be patient.
Yeah, but this is a prime example here where like I found you through the polymath term. That's the thing. I was searching deliberately for it, and I found you through it.
Yeah. I think that's great. I think also this will pave a new way for me to network with other polymaths. So I think that's one of the best things that has happened to this org so far. Yeah.
Well, and what's interesting is that I've actually seen most of the content online when it comes to polymathy. So recently, not to talk too much about myself, but I think you might find this interesting. I've been toying with this idea of this polymath, or actually multidisciplinary spectrum, where we take all the concepts like multi-potentialite, polymath, jack of all trades, and put it all on a spectrum for people to identify with. And in that process, I went on a research page where I looked at polymath, jack of all trades, multi-potentialite, specialist, looking at all these different terms. I didn't do the specialist, but I looked at all these different terms on Google, YouTube, Mix, Reddit, Spotify for podcasts, and all these different other search engines, Bing even. I looked at all of them for each term, and I basically opened up 100 to 150 tabs for each term. So I had literally had 750 tabs open at once at that time. And what happened was I was going through each of these articles, podcasts, and videos to absorb all of what people have created. And in that process, finding more people in our cohesive tribe. What's interesting is that there's not as much content as you would think out there about this. So people like us are actually in a kind of new field, despite the fact Polymathy's been around for so long. So I think we have a advantage there when it comes to like SEO and stuff like that. But what I found is that there's a lot of these different pockets of Polymath, like Polymath Playground or Polymath University in this case, or even Project Polymath, which is another university that was kind of similar in idea. It wasn't successful per se because it was like 10 years ago when it came out, or 8, I guess. But the thing was, the guy who made it is super interesting. I had him on the show too. And it's interesting how you and I both are trying to just get everybody together. And I'm hoping that I can create a tribe, umbrella tribe for all these different pockets to go into.
Yeah, that's great. Also, the fact that you're trying to like sort of quantize the different ways in which you can be like have a broader perspective, like being a polymath, being a jack of all trades. I think it's very unclear as of this moment how all these concepts relate and what they exactly entail. And I think research into polymathy will clarify this subject tremendously, and also help people like get the guidance of how to become one or the other, or at least help them get on the path, you know, because people don't really know what it entails being a polymath. And even I don't know it fully, but I can at least provide a beginning to this subject now, you know?
Exactly. And I watched your little mini series on polymathy. It was really well made. And you and I both are aspiring to be one, I guess, at this point. But what I find interesting is that not everyone has to be polymathic or polymath to be polymathic, like you're saying there. And specialists often have the curiosity, but they're told not to indulge in that. So the whole idea of a jack of all trades, master of none, but also sometimes better than a master of one is the full saying. And when people see that, it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. But people think, oh, a jack of all trades is a master of none. But that doesn't necessarily be true. You could be a master of one area and still be a jack of all trades. It's called T-shaped.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of marketers and business people who are T-shaped. And so I try to incorporate that too.
Yeah, I think that's also a great point. I also think that some people might think that I'm very in favor of polymaths, so I should be against specialization. But I say numerous times, also in my videos, that I think specialization is great. It has a lot to offer to us. But what we're kind of missing now is branching out in a broader way. And I think it is definitely possible for you to be an expert in one thing, maybe even two. You have a lot of people who are expert in two things, but also have that broader knowledge of just a lot of different things, you know, just for the sake of it. And it really helps your like knowledge. It really helps you even in your areas of expertise. All that outside perspective you can bring in there, it will really help you look with a fresh perspective in your own area of expertise.
That's true. And what's really interesting about that is when I was making the spectrum, I was working on a chart for it. And as I was filling it in with various terms and whatnot, I had this random kind of urge to be like, okay, there's specialists and there's polymath. Well, what about dual specialists? Because there's plenty of those around. Nanotechnology, biotechnology. Okay, it was bimath, as they would say. And then I was like, trimath. And I didn't even think about that until I was visually working on the chart. And some people will identify as that more than anything else in this list. And so having that in a visual representation and different angles too, bimass and trimass, something that's a bridge, is really cool.
Yeah, I think I'm just fantasizing about it, but I think it could be some sort of like shape image, maybe like 5 angles or something. You can put everything together and then connect it. I don't know. I'm just
no. I mean, I appreciate that. Like. Please, because I was trying to visualize it myself, and I just did a line graph. So I have a graph here where you have skill level and width of skill level, like how many skill levels. And so I had like polymath in the corner here, specialist over here, and kind of working that way because that was the only way I could really visualize it.
For some reason, an image of a polygon came in my head, but I don't know why.
No, it's interesting. I like that. And then, just kind of throwing this out there, do you have any questions for me to maybe help you along with your journey? Because I've been at this content creation for a while. Yeah,
I think you already gave me some tips that I loved. For example, how to edit faster or how engagement works on YouTube. For this question, I have to resort to this philosophical puzzle, this ancient philosophical puzzle that you you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So I can't tell you what I don't know, what would be helpful for me. Otherwise, I would probably already do it. But I would love to just stay in touch with you, and I think anything you can think of that might benefit me would actually be beneficial, unless I already know it by accident.
Well, I think you probably already know this, but content repurposing, trying to find ways to reformat your content. So if you make a video, cut the audio out, make it to a podcast, transcribe it, make it to a blog post. A lot of people know that, but they don't do it. And that's really interesting.
Yeah, I put a lot of the theories that I discuss in my videos, I also put on the website in the form of articles for people to just browse through it if they want some text. But audio might actually be interesting as well. I haven't thought of that yet, but could be something I could experiment with.
Yeah, we could talk about that.
Yeah,
so
thank you.
I'm going to read a line from your YouTube there. Your free online university made accessible in an easy easy language. Come and learn everything. So let's break that down. A free university online for people to come join. Now there is actually the University of the People, which is a college that's trying to do free school. They're trying doing that, although that's a more traditional path. What do you intend from this? From your university.
Yeah. So what I would like, so I want to put as much knowledge that I know through acquaintances or friends or people I used to work with in the past, or just stuff that I can find that might be interesting for polymaths, but also people interested in science. I want to put that out there in easy, accessible language. So I want to do my best so that people are not intimidated to learn a difficult subject like philosophy. And what I really want to do is to not only provide like the dry information for you there, like for example, here's this philosophical theory, here's what Aristotle said about, I don't know, ethics. You know, I don't want to just give you the theory. I also want to help you learn what kind of life lessons you can get out of this, you know? Like I really want to process the scientific information and take like really useful knowledge out of that you can apply in your own life. And I found this like numerous times in science, but I've also the people I've studied with don't really think about this stuff, you know, and they might not even know that it is there, you know. Like I've learned so much from like just solving math equations, you know. I've learned so much from that, like that's not in the math equation itself. So yeah, I just want to provide all the knowledge out there and also like kind of process it for you guys so you can get more out of it, you know?
Right. And so then the come and learn everything concept. Now, to people like ourselves, that seems great, but perhaps to other people, it might seem unfocused. So how do you feel about that?
Yes. So I've actually had this comment very often in university, either about something that I wanted to write. They would say it's too general or too broad, or my conclusions were too general or too broad, because I would always generalize it more to other areas than just the immediate research thing. I've heard this like 5 years long, and I still don't think it's a bad thing, what I do, because I emphasize, as I emphasize a lot, going into depth, we do a lot, but the breadth is overlooked often. And I think we definitely need more of that. And also, I don't like, I don't discriminate on knowledge. I think all kinds of knowledge could become useful in one way or another. So I wouldn't say that not focusing on one thing more should be more important than focusing on something else. And you never know what situation might come along where you can use some random theory that you learned 3 years ago, you know?
Right.
You never know. So what I think is learn as much as you can, and then when the time comes, you will find the applications.
It's true. And I think that having that width also prepares you, if anything, giving you cocktail level knowledge in some area would be really useful. So even just for chatting, if not for sparking a conversation for somebody that could teach you more. And then, so what sort of structure then are you envisioning for a lot of your stuff that you're creating?
Yes. Well, so I don't really want to offer like classes or physical classes where people have to be somewhere at a certain time or have to fill out certain requirements to be there. I just want to make it as easy as possible for people to come and learn. Like no threshold that they have to overcome, no money that they have to pay to learn a certain thing. So just all out there, videos, articles for free. And also, I was thinking about also adding to the website sort of forum or place where people can come to discuss. And then I perhaps later with a team of moderators could answer questions and help people like really understand the theories also in depth. So yeah, this is what is the plan for the website and the YouTube for now on, I think.
That's interesting because that's similar to what I did. When I started building my website, I started with the community first. And so I was making, do you use WordPress?
Yes, I do, yeah.
So there's BuddyPress for it, which is good and bad, but BuddyPress allows you to make that social network aspect. And so I was building this community around courses, essentially. And I found that WordPress doesn't have the best learning management systems out there, which kind of sucks because those course making tools are very important. That's why I'm trying to build my own actually at this point, which maybe you'll like the one I'm building to use. But I actually made a tribe for people like us for that same kind of idea of trying to come together and mentor other people if they need to. And part of the idea behind the modular degree actually is to have mentors to be able to help you along with what you're learning, like you're saying there. So I think that it's very brilliant. Good job.
Thank you.
What sort of challenges have you faced then when popularizing scientific knowledge?
Yeah, I think to be honest, I haven't had a lot of challenges. Like finding the knowledge is easy. Then you have to process it to make it just fun to watch or just remotely interesting for people. Just make it as interesting as possible. But yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot of problems with that either. I just try to throw a couple of jokes in there. People who watch like science videos and stuff can really appreciate a joke. You know, it's so easy. Just throw a joke in there. People will love it because you barely ever see that in science videos. You know, and the ones that do have that are madly successful, like Crash Course, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, the only challenge I have right now is I need to find people that can help me produce content that I have no knowledge of, that I'm not really good at. Like, I don't know, biology. I don't know anything about biology. Right. But I just a little bit. I've studied some like evolution and stuff with philosophy, but yeah, I couldn't tell you like what the components are of a cell or something. I have no idea.
Well, what might be interesting then is if this umbrella tribe that we're making here, maybe perhaps through that you'll find somebody for it.
Yeah,
and so,
hopefully. Yeah.
As learners, we both are creating these education videos and platforms essentially for university and modular degree. How can we stay as learners accountable to ourselves and to our respective platforms to learn more?
Yeah, I thought that was a great question. I think that, well, on the one hand, on our platforms, we play the role of educators. So it is our job to find as much useful knowledge for our audience and present it to them in an engaging manner. Yeah. That is one thing we should do. But we should also, on the other hand, stay curious and open to learn new things. I think even if you have taught a subject like 100 times, for example, if I have talked about Aristotle's viewpoints on ethics 100 times, a student might ask me something that might make me rethink the theory, you know? So any experience you might have, it can change your perspective. So be open to listen to people who might have different perspectives than you. It might teach you a thing or two, and just always try to stay open to learn new things that might change your perspective.
Yeah, that's not actually quite what I meant by the question, though. For the perspective of a learner, so someone coming to your channel or coming to the modular degree, as a learner, how can he be accountable? Because this is hard to be consistent, honestly.
So you mean how can these learners like stay consistent with your programs and keep going?
Yeah, be accountable. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I can't really give them exams and stuff. It might actually be an option to do just a little test to test your knowledge. But I think the most important thing for this And this is also where a little bit of trust comes in, is you need to trust that these people are intrinsically motivated to continue with your course or the thing that you're teaching. Because I've also had this at university where some professors would like make it mandatory for you to be present, and they would have like these forms. If you don't sign them, you'll get a check or something. It's not good. But I've always noticed that if I found the lecture of that person interesting, I would go no matter what. I would want to see that, or just look back on an online lecture if I missed it. But I think that is the most essential part of learning and staying motivated to learn. It needs to come from here, from your heart. You really need to be interested in that subject and want to know more. And it also helps if we teach people like why this knowledge is useful in the first place. And that's also what I want to do. Like if I teach people philosophy, I also want to teach them what use this has for your life. And I think if people know that is actually useful, how it is useful, they will stay intrinsically motivated for a long time to come.
For sure. And one of the reasons why I asked the question is that, for example, with MOOCs, online courses on like edX and stuff like that, only about 4% of people actually complete the courses. And many people start it because they're intrinsically motivated, but then they're not motivated enough to go through it. So that's one reason why I was asking to see if you had any ideas on that. But starting with why, it's like that TED Talk is one of the most viewed ones in the world. Start with Why by Simon Sinek. You have why, how, and what. And it seems like the philosophy is the why, the science is the how. But most courses and most videos start with the what. So the least interesting part is like, okay, this is what it is. Boom, that's it. So I've seen various polymathic education endeavors like ourselves, but how are you different? How is Polymath University different?
I think one thing that we do, which I haven't seen a lot in science so far, is we try to keep it light and we try to keep it, a little bit funny. As you have seen also in my videos, I incorporate jokes, and sometimes I just go bananas and throw in an entire 2-minute sketch, just because I think that, well, on the one hand, stand-up and jokes can actually teach you stuff, There's a very thin line between comedy and philosophy, which I could get in, like I could make an entire video on that. So that's one thing that is great about just making fun of the thing that you're learning, but it's also a great way to keep people engaged, I personally, if I think something is actually fun, I will do it for a very long time.
Yeah. Maybe you should make a video on that, comedy and philosophy.
I think I will actually do that. I've already made a short blog post on the philosophy of humor, which also has a lot of interesting books, and which I also plan on writing a book about in the future, because I happen to know a lot of stuff about this subject. Also for my personal life, because I've watched so many comedies in my life, but I always philosophized about like the messages and why it is funny and stuff like that. I always did that. Like, how people always say that you should never explain a joke because it kills the joke.
Right.
I always, in my own mind, I explain to myself why it is funny. I somehow find that very interesting.
Well, you're breaking it down, teaching you the comedy aspect behind it.
So exactly. If you do that, actually, it will teach you how to be funny.
Yeah.
It kills the joke at that point, but it will teach you how to make similar jokes later on.
Exactly.
So I actually would recommend it.
Especially, I actually did stand-up comedy a few times, and so I wish I had did that more, breaking down jokes to myself.
Yeah, for example,
Yeah. Something I ask all my guests, actually, is what is a polymath to you?
Well, I've studied this subject, so I would just answer with the definition, and I would say it's someone of wide knowledge or learning. But there is something very interesting about this definition, because as a philosopher, we always look at words and we try to understand like what words are clear and what words are vague. Actually, vague expressions play a huge role in logic as well, which is a branch of philosophy. Anyway, there is only actually one vague term in this definition, and that's the word wide. Like, wide doesn't tell you how wide it needs to be for someone to be recognized as a polymath. I think this is also why it is so confusing who exactly is a polymath in today's society and who doesn't fall into this category and how to become one, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I personally think that how wide, I would say, I think 3 would be the magic number here. Like you at least know 3 different things well. I think if you know 2 things very well, like you also named the term trimath. Yeah,
trimath
exactly.
or bimath, yeah.
Bimath. I think bimath is too little because we already have a lot of people with dual degrees in university. And intuitively, I wouldn't consider those people as polymaths.
Me either,
But if you want to become a trimath, you need to have at least your dual degree or just independent study, and then you need to go outside that and do even more on your own. I think when someone does that, at the very least, they should deserve to be called a polymath, I think. That's a minimum criterion, I think.
Perhaps it's what not we say, it's what the people around us, what your legacy entails. And that's because we've called a lot of people like Benjamin Franklin a polymath, when at their time that was not even a thing that they would think of. And so posthumously might be another way of going about it.
That's a good point. But I think that's also kind of a shame that posthumously we tend to finally recognize an individual as a polymath. While if we actually did that while he was alive, that would mean that we would listen to him more,
or her,
perhaps even push more resources in that direction so he can do more stuff with those resources. I think that if we have a good system that recognizes polymaths early on, that will allow us to bring more funding and resources to them so that we can actually get really cool stuff done while they are alive.
Yeah. So whether he or she is becoming a polymath in life or not, being able to identify it. And that's something that a lot of these researchers are trying to figure out. How do we identify or authenticate someone's a polymath? And a lot of them try to focus too much on the education front. Like you have to have a degree, stuff like that. And you and I both don't think we have to have a degree to become one, but I do think it's easier that way because it's quicker. But Dr. Angela Catalesa and Michael Araki, those 2 prominent researchers, there's a few more awesome ones, but those are 2 that come to mind. I read a lot of their research and watched I watched both of their YouTube channels completely. And it's interesting just how they're conveying it. So I often tell people, go look at that stuff because it's really great. But the way they define it too is kind of how we're saying. Like if we can define it sooner, you can identify it as that person and be able to exemplify it more in your life and do more because of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
So you and your co-founder, Marley, both have multiple degrees, which is pretty cool. What sort of degrees do you have?
Yeah. So Marley, who is also my girlfriend and currently my roommate as well, she has a bachelor's degree in sociology, bachelor's degree in philosophy, and a master's degree in philosophy.
Wow.
I myself have a bachelor's degree in communication and media, a bachelor's degree in philosophy, and a master's degree in philosophy. And we both did different stuff in our minors. So during your bachelor degree, you can spend 4 or 5 months studying whatever the heck you want. I did maths and she did psychology. So we also have a little bit of that going on. And me personally, in my 5 years of university, I also spent time reading books on whatever I found interesting. I even read some stuff from Einstein. I read some stuff from Roger Penrose, who's a physicist and also kind of a philosopher. But philosophers from my study wouldn't really call him a philosopher, but that's pretty irrelevant right now. I've studied. There's too much to name. I also have some books lying around. I've read Stephen Hawking, a little bit of computer science. Yeah, just name it, man.
I mean, I wouldn't know what you mean at all. Organizing for social change, the Tao of physics, Plato, principles of economics. I get you. That's cool.
I have some economics as well, Plato as well. Yeah.
So that's interesting too. This next question is a little bit more basic, but how can we be more polymathic?
I think becoming more polymathic is simply put about learning as much as possible. But people, if I say this, people would make the assumption that Nico means right now I should read as much as possible, and that's certainly true. That plays a role, but it's not everything. There are so many different ways in which you can learn besides just reading. One way, for example, is to, when you look at like artistic things, like I'm talking about movies, novels, music, they all have like this message, in the narrative, or multiple messages, that they're trying to teach you. Every movie, every story has a moral, like they're trying to teach you something. Just becoming aware of what these narratives are trying to teach you, and also reflecting on it, like, is this a good message? Like, how would this reflect in my behavior? How could I change my behavior to incorporate this life lesson? Maybe, I don't know. That's one way. You can also learn from experience. Every time something happens to you, something bad happens to you, you can learn from it. Like, maybe you did something wrong. If you got into an argument with your boss and you almost got fired, maybe you did something wrong. Maybe you can learn something about social interactions in dominance hierarchies. Maybe you can learn something about it. Everything you experience, you can learn from it. But people don't reflect usually on all of the stuff that happens in your life.
Well, it comes down from like passive to deliberate learning too. Reading and consuming stuff, that's passive learning. You're taking it in, but you're not necessarily doing anything with it. Creating content is another way of learning. I've learned a lot just by making videos. And on top of that too, like projects and applying the knowledge in a physical, or not physical, but like applied way that way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's also one of the final things I would say. Well, there are much more, I suppose, but one of the last things I would say right now is you learn a lot by doing stuff. And there's also this notion, there's this concept of tacit knowledge, which is kind of like implicit knowledge, stuff that you can't really put into words. Mm-hmm. And this has been researched a lot in philosophy over the past decades. It started with this philosopher called Michael Polanyi in the 70s, I believe, who wrote a book about this. And then this notion started to become research about knowing stuff that you can't express in words. Like how to catch a ball, for example. Catching a ball is so immensely complex. Mm-hmm. We have so much difficulty teaching this to robots because there's so much tacit knowledge involved, right? So every time you do something, you experience something, you get tacit knowledge. You don't really know it in an explicit way, but you learn a lot of new stuff every time you do something.
It's true. And it makes me think of Richard Feynman, who kind of coined the term of like, if you can't explain something simply, you don't know it well enough. And being able to break things down with like the Feynman technique. The other day, growing up, I sucked at sports. But the other day, I was teaching basketball to one of my personal training clients who happens to be a kid. And he wanted to play basketball. And I'm like, okay, I'm not really that good. But it turns out me and him both were better than we thought. We were both getting baskets. And the thing is, when I was teaching him how to play, because he's still a kid, he still needs to learn. I was teaching him the physics of it. I was like, you have to arch the ball in this way, project your hands going fast enough at this angle, having both hands on the ball, but having one being the main one, and teaching him the physics and the actual knowledge behind catching and throwing a ball.
Yeah, that's also a great example of like how you learn something, some theory, this time it's physics, and it actually helps you at some point in time to play basketball better and to actually teach it to a kid who wants to learn it. Like, I think that's great, and people don't really notice all of this stuff that they can do just because they learn some theories, at university or independent study. And one of the goals of my projects is also for people to become aware what all of this stuff has to offer for them.
And be able to make connections in the areas that they do know already. And just to put this out there, kind of going off your idea of just explaining things well, I'm a swim instructor of 8 years now at this point, and this is actually some future content for me that I'm foreshadowing here, but 3 Ps of swimming, the 3 Ps. Physics, philosophy, and psychology. Those are the 3 most important things when it comes to swimming. You wouldn't think that psychology and philosophy is very important, but it really is. And most of the problems, like literally like 75% of most people's problems, is the fact that they feel like they need to breathe. Okay, well, you don't actually. It usually just means you need to breathe out. That's just basic cardio. That usually it's the carbon dioxide building up and people panic. That one little basic thing goes for most of the teaching that I do.
That's incredibly fascinating, actually. And yeah, there are so many applications of all these sciences for everyday things, like
Yeah.
swimming. I mean, people just don't see it yet.
So something we both use are binaural beats. In fact, at the beginning of this interview, I turned some on because my brain was frazzled and unfocused. And so I turned on some in the background. So what has your experience been with them?
Yeah, so when I first discovered binaural beats, I was greatly interested in this process. First of all, I didn't know that your neurons kind of oscillate in sync with each other, which produces these brain waves. I thought that was already so interesting. But then I discovered that not only do they like rhythmically oscillate, they also oscillate in certain patterns when you do certain behaviors. Like they go through all these types of oscillations when you sleep. They have all sorts of different stuff when you're awake, when you're focused, etc. And then I realized that you can listen to these binaural beats in order to like put your brain in the state that you want it, like put it more in that state. So yeah, I started experimenting with it. I listened to delta waves right before I go to sleep, which slows your brain down. You also have like these delta waves in REM sleep. For some reason, that works really well for me to get a good night's sleep if I listen to it right before. Yeah, and when I need to focus, I put on alpha or beta waves, which are the higher frequencies, which your brain is in when it's more alert. So if I'm feeling sleepy, I might put that on, and it helps me to be more awake for the job. Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting too because alpha is a little bit more creativity, beta is a little bit more focus, and you're saying delta for sleep. I think I went for theta for sleep. So I think theta
that also works.
Yeah, because I think that one's a little bit more early on. Like you said, delta is more for like REM. There's actually multiple cycles of sleep, as I found out. Not just REM or like getting into REM. There's multiple phases that all are important for different tasks while you're sleeping. So different recovery areas, like the lymphatic system, for example, and getting into different binaural beats for those systems. And what's interesting is that each people have their own wavelength that they prefer, is what I found when I talk to people about this. So which one of your favorites to get into?
Yeah, it's good that you also mentioned the theta, which is a little bit less slow than the delta, but still quite down there. But for me, somehow, if I listen to delta over theta, I just instantly feel drowsy. That works so well for me. So for that reason, also I'm pretty like, I'm a little bit hyperactive. So sometimes it's a bit difficult for me to fall asleep because I just have so much stuff going on in my mind that I like to think about. I'm usually pretty energetic, you know?
Yeah.
So that's why delta is one of my biggest aids in just falling asleep, man. And I used to have trouble falling asleep when I was younger as well. I also didn't know like what the effects were of caffeine if you would drink it later than 7 and stuff like that. And blue light, I had no idea about blue light when I was young.
Later than just an afternoon, because like it stays in your system for like 24 hours. So if you do it after set or even after 3 or something like that, it's even more still powerful, keeping you up. I remember one day.
Yeah, I think with caffeine it breaks down like by halves. Like you break down half, then an hour later or something, another half, but there's still a little bit like working in your system after a number of hours. It becomes negligible, I think. Yeah, around 24 hours probably, but it becomes pretty negligible, I think, in like 12 or 14 hours. But I'm also not an expert on this. But sorry, what were you going to say?
I don't know exactly what I was going to say, but I remember that I used to drink a lot of caffeine, like 600 to 800 milligrams a day, which is way too much. Part of that came from pre-workout because I'm a fitness fanatic and I teach. I've taught for like 10 years. And so I've been learning for 10 years. I've taught for like about 8. And what's interesting is that pre-workout often has 200 to 300 milligrams, which is, it's more than an energy drink. And so I would drink that for working out, and that can cause a lot of issues with that. So I've been actually decreasing that over the past couple of years and doing better with that.
Nice.
And like you said, blue light too is a big deal. They say about an hour before bed. It's like I can't go that long without my screens. At least for music, I need my screen for music. I have the red light.
Yeah, or just people love to look at a story or something right before going to sleep. I hear that a lot. But yeah, just having a blue light filter can already help a lot. I have blue light filters on pretty much any device that I use, or glasses. That as well.
I bought these. These were really nice. I need to use them more. I'll keep them on my desk. But those help a lot.
Yeah.
And so one of my later phases for PolyInnovator actually is going to be focused on gaming. And so what are your thoughts on being a content creator for education and gaming?
Yeah. So I really look at these two things as different parts of my personality, you know? When I make a science video, it feels like I'm putting on my science hat and now I'm Science Nico, you know? And when I do gaming, I put on my gaming hat. But yeah, the thing is, I've been doing games like ever since I have my first memory. I was playing games. I was already doing speed runs on the Nintendo 64 when I was like 7 or 8, I don't know. I mean, it has been a huge part of my life ever since I can remember. And also, now that I do it, I took a break from gaming when I was in college because I was doing the dual degrees and stuff. I didn't have any time. Now I have more time. It's my hobby again. But I've noticed it also works wonders for me to stay young. Like, I often meet people through gaming that are a bit younger than me, maybe 18, 16, 15, you know. And they all are sort of still in this, like a little bit high school, that being cool is still such a huge factor in their life. Being popular is so important. But if you can like interact with these people and really just like become friends with people like this, then it's gonna have a huge influence on like what kind of stuff you know about pop culture nowadays and what kind of language you can use to interact with them. It makes you more flexible. It gives me the feeling that with one step I'm still in like the younger generations, and with the other foot I'm treading in like the science and like the higher education stuff. It feels like I'm still connected in like the youth and like the older generations, you know. And I think that actually is great. It feels great. It makes me feel good.
I wouldn't necessarily make them mutually exclusive, because there's people who are young who are like, there's Avi Schiffman who made a COVID tracking tool. So he's highly scientific when the stuff he does and stuff like that, but he's like 17. And just kind of going off your point too, I think that surrounding yourself with people of all ages is very smart. So good point on you, Nico. One of my classes that I teach is like this arthritis-based class in the pool, and most of the clientele are 70 and up. And so it's interesting how growing up as a teenager and as a young adult, I was surrounded by people who were significantly older than me and people who were lifeguards who were significantly younger than me. So it was that dynamic of just ages all around.
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, I also agree, of course. But in general, I think science is more like driven by like professors, tenured professors. Like those are the like real bosses of science, I would say. And typically gamers are a bit younger, maybe in their 20s. You have a lot of streamers nowadays who are in their 20s and 30s. But I think, maybe, I don't know for certain, but I think the biggest part of the gamers is between 10 and 20. That's my personal experience until now.
Yeah.
But I totally agree with that it has so many advantages to interact with people of many different ages.
Yeah, and you ought to look into the data of gamers, because it's actually interesting how wide-ranging the ages are, because a lot of gamers were like us, where we started out with it. So people were like who grew up on the NES, for example. You and I grew up on the N64 era. And one thing I thought was cool is when you're telling your story about your gaming is how we both started kind of at the same age and that same point, but we went different paths. You went more towards like speedrunning. I went more cross-platform. So I would go like PlayStation, Xbox, and N64, all that stuff. I focused on diversity. It's cool.
Yeah, no, I did some of that too. I played mostly on the Nintendo 64 and the PlayStation, but when the PlayStation 2 came, I kind of stopped with that. Also played a little bit of Xbox, but now I just play on PC. I mean, PC is the best tech at this point, so I don't know.
I will argue for the new consoles though, because those new
PlayStation 5,
no, the Xbox Series X.
Okay.
Like that one is technically better besides the SSD. We can go on a whole tangent about that, you and I. So you kind of made a point in your head that you wear separate hats in the gaming and education.
Yeah.
And that's because like your Polymath University is more of like an organizational brand versus a personal brand. And for PolyInnovator, it's a little bit different. It's more of a personal brand. So I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on this too, because I felt conflicted. I was like, well, it's my own channel. It's the channel of me, basically. But
Yeah.
it's also like it's more polymathic education and gaming. So I don't know if I should have separated that. So what are your thoughts on what I should do?
I think that both could work. Like you have a lot of more little bit personal bloggy type of YouTube channels that are very successful and can do a lot of different stuff. For me, it felt like at some point, so I was doing the science thing a lot. I was reading a lot and people really got to know me as like Nico the science dude, you know? At some point it felt like, okay, this part of my personality has grown and matured enough that it deserves its own channel. So that's how I felt about the science thing. And then I got into gaming again, like a little bit over a year ago. It became my hobby again. I started doing it frequently and meeting a lot of people also online, you know, in the different games. And people also started to recognize me as that gamer guy, Nico, you know, or Poly. They call me Poly on
same
in the
actually.
games.
They do that to me too. Yeah, I was just thinking about that as you were speaking. I was like, I need an active listen, but that thought came to my brain. If you and I are playing together, Polybra and PolyInnovator.
Yeah. That's gonna be mad confusing.
Yeah, they'll probably just call you bra.
Yeah, bro. Yeah. But at some point it felt like, okay, this part of my personality has also grown now. Mm-hmm. It's like it has like certain needs and desires, just like an actual human. Very philosophical way to think about this. But I thought, okay, this part of me has grown up. Let's give him a channel as well. But mm-hmm. I think both can work. I think what you're doing also works.
It's interesting. Yeah. Well, thank you. Are you looking forward to playing anything on a stream?
So I played, the main game I'm playing right now is Fortnite. You probably know it. And I don't know why, but this game sort of got a little bit of a bad rep in the gaming community. Some people say it's childish and stuff like that. I never really understood that, because from the first moment that I was playing this game, mm-hmm. I noticed that it requires such a high cognitive complexity and just intelligence and intuition to become really good at this game. Yeah. Because it's not only a shooter. So with shooters, you have like this reaction time element that comes into it. That plays a huge role in shooters. But with this one, you can also build for cover. And there are tremendously complex sequences of builds that you can pull out to outplay your opponent, that they have zero chance of hitting you whatsoever if you have the right sequence of builds. And this element also makes it kind of feel, not really feel, but it kind of makes you think of a chess game, you know? Yeah. If you're really good at chess, if you can pull out a certain sequence of movements, then your opponent is chanceless, unless they're at your level, and then they can pull out the sequence of movements that counters your sequence of movements. So it's incredibly complex. And you can also see at like the money that you can earn by winning tournaments. I get the feeling like there's a tight relationship between the degree of complexity that you can do and the amount of money you can earn by doing it, right? So if you're a bus driver, you will earn less than being a pilot. Well, one of the reasons is because pilot has to do more complex stuff, you know? And I get the feeling that's also similar with if you're playing a game right now, if you're streaming it, you're not going to earn so much money if you're speed running Mario 64, but you are going to earn lots of money. There are already many millionaires who play Fortnite if you can whip out the right sequences of builds to outplay your opponents. It's mad. It's so interesting.
So I think part of it has to do with the battle royale genre, not just Fortnite in general. But Warzone and PUBG aren't necessarily as complex as the other two big ones, meaning Fortnite and Apex. Apex is actually the one I play because I tried Fortnite, in fact,
Yeah.
a couple times. I was actually one of the first people on Fortnite. I think I was season 1 or season 2 when I was playing it.
Yeah.
And I didn't like it as much. In fact, like you said, I kind of felt like it was childish. And it might actually just be the cartoony graphics, not necessarily the gameplay. Because like you said, it does take strategy. You're completely on point with that. I would even say Apex is the same way because the way that you look at the map, what areas you might need to go to, understanding where different squads would be, and unlike Fortnite, which have the building's the complexity, I feel like, aspect behind Fortnite there. On Apex, it's kind of like Overwatch, where each of the characters have ultimates and powers. Yeah. And so that's kind of the complexity aspect. But if you can find certain combinations and team coordination on both games, I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, totally. Those are also great games. I mean, but that's also exactly the point you make. I get the feeling that Fortnite indeed gets the bad rep because of the graphics and the cartoony vibes you get. Yeah, I mean, I personally never had a problem with that. I mean, I still kind of watch cartoons. I mean, I always watched like South Park, even when I was 18 and stuff like that. I mean, I've never had problem with that. For me, the most important thing is like the idea behind it. Like you can give me the worst animation possible, but if you can bring me something hilarious, a hilarious situation, or just something meaningful, something that I can relate to or find interesting, then I don't care, you know?
Yeah. Well, and that wasn't the only reason why I stopped playing, but it does make points. And there was another.
But it's not for everyone. I fully. It's not. This game is not for everyone. You need a specific taste in games to appreciate this game.
Are you pivoting a bit? Are you ready for that PhD in philosophy you're intending on pursuing?
Yes. So it's actually kind of funny because when I started out with philosophy. That was a couple of years ago, and when I was in the master degree, actually I also did it's kind of a special Dutch type of master degree. It's called a research master. It's an extra year, and what they do, they prepare you for a PhD, basically. They train you to become a PhD. Mm-hmm. When I was in this trajectory, all I could think about was doing a philosophy PhD. Was the only thing I thought that I wanted to do in my career. Then I was done with studying, and then I started to do YouTube stuff and the website stuff. And then the idea kind of started boggling in my mind, like, why not just do this full time? You know, if I can build it to a certain point that I can just live off it. I don't even need like a fancy salary or a fancy car. I don't care about that at all. The only thing that matters to me right now is doing what I love and like actually providing value for people, like lessons, education that actually helps them in life. So doing what I love and helping people. That's the only thing that's on my mind right now. Yeah. So I'm doing my utmost best to do this professionally, that I can live off it. If it succeeds, I will continue doing it, of course. Otherwise, if it doesn't blow up to a point where I can live off it, then I could always do the PhD and do this on the side, or just get some other part-time job and do this on the side. Yeah. But doing this will probably go on for a long time, I think.
I totally agree. I totally resonate with that. Like, it doesn't matter if I'm working 3 jobs. I've worked 3 jobs just so I could come home and work on PolyInnovator. So I totally get you. This leads us to the next question then too, because since we're both so passionate, why do we need polymaths?
Yeah. Why do we need polymaths? I've already talked about this in some of my like videos or articles. There are numerous things I think that polymaths can do. First of all, I am under the impression that the sciences are fragmented at this point because first they were kind of united before like the scientific revolution. Everything was pretty much philosophy. If you wanted to become a scholar, you would do philosophy. You could learn math. You could learn natural sciences. You could learn about the mind. You could do pretty much anything. Then the scientific revolution came, and now the sciences are mature and doing their own thing, and we forget the connections between all the sciences. So I think polymaths can find these connections between the sciences and bring them more together. That's one thing I think polymaths can do. Other thing that I think that they can do is they can provide more complete answers to big questions that require a broad perspective, knowledge of many different things. An example I can give, which I've also given talking about the subject, is what is the best way to organize a society? Like, this is a question that is one of the most important ones that we need to answer. And philosophy has been talking about this for millennia. You know, the ancient Greece already thought that we should just have a democracy, but a very specific type of democracy that was a lot different than what we have nowadays. But there's so much that you should know to answer this question correctly. I think you should know a lot about sociology as well, like how people relate to each other. You should know about psychology, how the mind works, what people want, what are their needs and desires. You should know about economy. You don't want a society where the economy plunges into darkness at some point. Like, I don't know for sure, but I've heard that like communism, for example, might not be the best way to organize the economy. Yeah, because it becomes too difficult when people come into power, you know. When people are into power, they decide where all the resources go, and then it's an easy way for people to become corrupted. While we don't have that as fast with capitalism, though I do think that we might even be able to find a better system than capitalism. Yeah. But you need to know all of this stuff if you're going to organize a society. I think that would be best.
Well, this perfectly leads me into the question, what do you think the future of our society is? Okay. And ours as in global, I guess.
Yeah. So I think that AI, artificial intelligence, is going to play a bigger and bigger role. There are already, people don't realize what AI already does for us. We have AI in spam protection. Mm-hmm. We have AI in autopilot. We have AI in navigation, like Google Maps and stuff. AI is everywhere. People don't realize it. And I think that it's gonna grow more and play a more like omnipresent role in human society. And you also see, like, for example, Elon Musk, who invests a lot in AI research and has his own AI laboratory. I think this stuff is gonna go, is gonna play such a big role in human societies. So that is one thing. And also, you're going to see more like the interconnection of AI and humans. So, for example, there was this book by Ray Kurzweil, who argued that in 2050, I believe, we're going to see like this exponential increase in knowledge, I think, or like how machines, or was it like machine intelligence, something like that. Anyway, machines and computers are going to become so intelligent that we need to like merge with them to keep up. Otherwise, they will become too intelligent for us and perhaps enslave the human race. So he thought that's around the time where we would start to see like merging with human intelligence and artificial intelligence. And also the stuff Elon Musk is doing right now with the brain-machine interfaces, I think stuff like that is going to be the next step in human cognitive evolution. I don't know if I completely agree with the prediction that's going to happen in 2050, but I think we're going to see like this like intermingling of basically computers and human brains. And yeah, I think that's going to happen. And finally, I think that space travel is going to get more complex. We're going to go to other planets. We can live there. And we're going to go deeper and deeper in the universe, unravel some of the deep mysteries of the universe. I think that's gonna blow our mind. I think the stuff we're going to discover out there, I think that's going to blow our mind.
I used to study astrophysics for fun, so I totally understand. Where do you see actually, before I ask this, one of my main principles in life, before I actually started to do these interviews, I'd had a question, it's like, what are your principles? So I was going to ask you that next, but my main principle is balance, particularly through science and philosophy. So what is one of your principles in life?
This principle will seem rather specific and perhaps even not even that useful, but one of my main principles is save time.
Mm.
That is one of my main principles. But it's actually very universal. You have no idea the stuff that, well, you know, because you already told me how to edit videos faster. But the general population has no idea all the stuff that they could do to save time. And if you have a couple of hours more on a day to do the stuff that you love or the things that you're really interested in, that's gonna pile up over the years. And before you know it, in your lifespan, you will have an extra 2 or 3 years to do the things you love. Yeah. It's a lot, actually. A couple of hours on a day is actually a lot because you only have 24 hours and you spend 8 hours sleeping. So 3 hours extra on a day is already almost, it's around 1/6, around 1/5 extra, you know?
Well, we were talking about sleep earlier, and I spent a lot of time actually learning about sleep. Turns out, this is newer science, so it's not super proven yet, but sleep chronotypes, more than just early bird versus night owl, but certain people need more sleep, certain people need less sleep, some people are more early, some people are more late. And what we're seeing with remote working, for example, is that people are actually working more in their productivity hours versus the 9 to 5 that was created for society and by Henry Ford specifically. But it's interesting how people are actually being more productive and actually getting more time to do what they want to do because they got their work done already and they have more time to do stuff.
Yeah, I very much dislike 9 to 5. I remember at high school, I was at a history class and my teacher said, why aren't you working harder? Like, don't you want to get a good job later? And I said, like, it's not going to be 9 to 5. Yeah. I remember it was something like that. I don't want a 9 to 5 job. Well, and it's for me, I'm actually very productive. Like right when I wake up, like I just groom myself and eat and stuff. Then I'm very productive for like 3 or 4 hours. Mm-hmm. But then I need like a longer break, like a couple to 2 hours or something, do something else. And then I could be productive again for a couple of hours. And that's just not 9 to 5. Well, you have the lunch, but I need longer. And I also need to start later. It just works best for me.
Yeah, same. I think we're pretty similar in that. And that comes down to like deep work, focusing for 3 hours. And you also need play. People like that song, work hard, play hard. It's true. You do need to play hard. You need to relax and have fun. Video games are great for that. And then on top of that, one of the other things I was going to mention is like the circadian rhythms, for example. The cycles of when you're more awake. I don't wake up mentally until 10 a.m. or 10 p.m., both of those times. And so back in high school, like you were saying there, like, why aren't you working hard? It's like, well, I'm not awake yet. Like I'm literally not waking up till another class later.
Exactly.
So this brings me to the question then, where do you see the intersection of science and philosophy?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, before the scientific revolution, philosophy was everything. Like philosophy literally means in Greek, love of wisdom. Philos means love, and Sophia means wisdom. So in the past, what you used to do, if you studied philosophy, you would study everything. So then the sciences matured, they start to do their own thing, and goodbye philosophy. Nowadays, philosophy is studying a bunch of different things. For example, it studies ethics, what is good. It studies aesthetics, what is beautiful. I still find that branch of philosophy a little bit random, but okay, it studies
Everyone
that.
has their own preference, really.
Yeah. It has metaphysics, what is reality, basically. And it studies epistemology, what is knowledge, what can we know, you know. But I think philosophy should also still play a role in like, for example, you also have like in every study that you do at university, you always also learn like the philosophy of physics or the philosophy of, I have the philosophy of communication and media. I don't know if this is a Dutch thing. I don't think so, but you also have like the philosophy of every discipline that you're studying, you learn a bit of philosophy about them. And I think that shows that philosophy is still part of all the sciences. And it is also in between. Like there's also this metaphor that philosophy is the glue that holds all the sciences together. And here you can also see like the relationship with polymathy, because before the scientific revolution, philosophy and polymathy were also basically very similar, because they were both about just studying a bunch of different stuff and just finding interesting things in there, just taking that broader perspective, you know. So I still see philosophy as part of every science, And now it's kind of doing its own thing. But as I said, some things I find a bit random.
Mhm.
I think philosophy should focus more on the sciences and what it can provide as interpretation for the results that sciences find. I think that would be a great key role that philosophy could play in the 21st century and beyond.
That's interesting. And to keep it at more of that start with why mentality we mentioned earlier. So how can we work hard then and chase after our dreams?
Yes, good question. So there are a number of things I have to say about this topic. First of all, if you want to achieve your dreams, you have to really learn how to work efficiently, and that also means how to save time. So for example, I already grabbed a book that I want to recommend for you guys. It's called Algorithms to Live By, and this book really teaches you, like, these guys are computer science guys, and they learned all sorts of tricks on how to make a computer run more efficiently. And what these guys did, like real philosophers, they took that knowledge from that field, or polymaths, took the knowledge from that field and applied it to daily life. Like, what can we learn from how we make computers run more efficiently? There's some great stuff in here, like even the way you order your activities on a day can make a difference on how well you do those things, right? So these are one of the things that you can learn from reading this book. And there's also this concept of metawork. I also discussed this in my video. Metawork is when you work to do your actual work, like the work you have to do before you can start with the thing. For example, if you have to go to work and you have to finish paperwork for a deadline, the meta work is you driving there and you fixing your hair and you getting Starbucks, while if you worked at home, you didn't have all that stuff. Now, I'm not saying everyone should always work at home because that is the most efficient way to do it. No, of course not. Working with people also has many advantages, but you can look at your day and you can cut out a lot of this unnecessary meta work. Like, for example, when I'm writing a script for my YouTube, when I take a break, I write down what I'm going to do next. So just when I come back, I don't have to spend 5 minutes thinking about, what was I going to do next? You know, that happens every time. Just write it down, save me 5 minutes.
Especially if you're forgetful too.
Yeah. You can find a lot of these things that you do on a day that are useless, that you can cut out, just by thinking about them.
Well, this goes back to your principle of saving time. And so, for example, too, and the topic habits, James Clear talks about some of the ideas of if you want to do a good habit, like learning to play guitar, and cut out a bad habit, like watching TV, then the way you set up your environment is very important. So this is kind of going back to that meta work where if you want to play guitar, but it's stuck in a closet, well, you then have to go into the closet, grab it out, pull it out, then do it, instead of just putting it right there in front and center to play it. Versus like watching the TV, well, put the remote in a drawer in the very back and say you have to have more barriers to entry. The other thing is too, before I like stop here rambling here, is the idea of systems. And so the algorithmic thinking, like you're saying there, having tools that help you. I moved from like Google Sheets and Airtable to a tool that's called Notion.so. Fascinating tool. And one of the best things about it that saves me a lot of time is that every line in the database of my content is its own document versus with Google Sheets, every line had to have a separate link for Google Docs. That's a separate tool that takes time to load for me to go into into that versus just having it all built in to Notion, which has been a great help.
It's funny. I had a discussion with my girlfriend the other day that relates to the example you said before this, that you need to go grab the guitar out of the closet. We were talking about vacuum cleaning, and at her like parents' place, there's this, when you have to go vacuuming, you have to go into this closet, you have to dig through a bunch of stuff and get the vacuum cleaner. Right here, we just have the vacuum cleaner within reach. So when we want to vacuum, we just grab the thing, go like this, and we're done. And just the fact that you don't have to dive into the closet, get all these wires and stuff, because that 5 minutes is not there, the experience of vacuuming is much more pleasurable, and with everything you do, pretty much, there is some meta work that you can just cut out, which will make the thing more pleasurable. And actually, I think real boredom doesn't come from just doing something that you have to do that you don't like doing. I think the boredom comes from the fact that you have to do something repetitive that accompanies it that you just don't want to do.
Yeah.
Like maybe that explains why I don't like cleaning. There's just something that I haven't worked out yet that is kind of meta-worky, that if I can cut that out, then maybe it will become more pleasurable. I don't know. Maybe I should listen to a podcast while I clean, because then I'm doing something productive and not just only doing the meta-worky stuff.
It's interesting too is that Notion also has an idea of templates. And so in that database, I used to have to like make a Google Doc that had my template, copy and paste it into the new tool I was using, like, or not the new tool, the new piece of content, copy that, paste it, and then edit through there. Whereas with Notion, if I make up a new line in that database, open that up, well, I can click the template that I already made and just automatically apply it to it, saving me a ton of time. And it's just one of those things, meta work that I cut out.
Yeah, exactly. So the second part of your question, I haven't answered yet. I think it was about fulfilling your dreams. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's one aspect of it. That is that you save time, so you have more time to actually achieve your goals. The other one is chasing your dreams is actually something very scary, because you need to plunge into the unknown, and you need to do all sorts of new stuff that you've never done before, and you need to learn all sorts of stuff that you don't know. And that is very scary, and that sometimes disencourages people to get started with it anyway. But if you want to accomplish your dreams, you need to start. You need to start as soon as possible, get the ball rolling. And once you're on your way, well, you need to get over this fear. And once you're on your way, you need to learn every time you fail at something. Like if you have certain goals, if you try to accomplish like these micro steps you take to achieve your final goal, every time you fail, you need to learn something. Every time you achieve something, you need to learn something as well. Why did what you did work? What did you do that worked well? Maybe you can keep doing that. Just keep learning. Everything you do, learn from it, think about it, reflect. And if you take this process, I think you will achieve your goal no matter what. It might take time, but I think you will get there.
Well, and I usually ask around this time too, what could be a call to action? I think that's a perfect call to action there. Just keep learning and try to learn from everything you're doing.
Yeah. I think that is one of the most important things I've learned in this lifetime of studying and doing all sorts of things. Learn from what you do, man. Just reflect, think, just take some time to think. When you're lying in bed, think about what you're doing and think about what you can learn. If you saw a movie, learn from it, man. Just think about it. And the more often you do this, the better you come at like finding like the inner message or the deeper meaning of things, of experiences or stories. You can see it so fast, and then you already learned so much, then it becomes so easy to evaluate if this lesson is good. Sometimes I watch a movie, I think this message is not good, man. It's like, I understand you have these filmmakers, they want to convey a certain message. Sometimes I just don't agree, and that happens. Like, it happens. That's what it is. But the more often you do it, the better you become at it.
I agree. And so, Nico, where can people find you online?
Yes. So you can look for Polymath University on YouTube. I also have it written on my t-shirt if you don't know how to spell it. I need one of those t-shirts. You can also look for Polymath University on Google. It should be the first hit. Otherwise, polymathuni.com. And if you're interested remotely in my gaming endeavors, then it's Polybruh, BRUH, on Twitch and on YouTube. And that is my online presence as of now.
I'll make sure I have links in the description for you, bud.
Okay,
no worries.
Thank you.
Once again, this is Dustin Miller, PolyInnovator, and this was Nico from Polymath University on the Polymath Polycast. So thank you for coming.
Thanks again for having me.